Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Examiner. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe so that you can become part of the 100,000 plus people who are joining us there. I'm joined today by Byron York, Chief Political Correspondent. And Byron, I want to talk about Elon Musk and DOGE, who have been hyperactive. Certainly they have now have space in the minds of Democrats and the left. There's been a frantic reaction from the Democrats and from those who've got largesse from the $40 billion of USAID. What is your interpretation of what's going on with the Doge and Musk, and indeed in the reaction?
Well, first of all, they picked a target for cutting government spending that was really pretty low-hanging fruit. USAID, which is a so-called independent agency inside the executive branch, which is kind of doesn't make any sense, because if you're in the executive branch, you're subject to the President of the United States. And so that's one of the points that actually DOGE is proving, is that, you know, you're not an NGO and who can do whatever you want. These are taxpayer dollars you're having. So then they're going after the low-hanging fruit inside of DOGE. They're going after a lot of woke sort of spending inside of USAID. Now, we should say, USAID does things like send 1,000 tons of wheat to some famine-struck country, or it sends medicine to deal with malaria or tapeworm in some third world country. So this kind of stuff is actually not being affected, and the actual head of USAID, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said that. So I think what we're seeing is kind of like what we've seen for many years. You remember, there's always a member of Congress, and he combs through the federal budget, and he finds some absolutely ridiculous expenditure. That, you know, we've built a treadmill for shrimp somewhere in, you know, Washington State or something like that. And why did we spend $50,000 on it? This is kind of like that, and it's also one of the most Musk and Trump are kind of, I think, cleverly going after one of the least popular areas of the federal government because of the federal budget, because a lot of Americans just don't support the kind of foreign aid that we're talking about. They do support sending the wheat, or they do support sending the malaria drugs. But this other stuff, no. Well,
every so often, and actually fairly frequent, people talk about cutting out waste, fraud, and abuse. And I wrote this week that you were not going to get the federal budget into order by cutting out waste, fraud, and abuse. It is nevertheless a pure good to cut out waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think that is something that it's all that waste, fraud, and abuse also gets to a kind of attitude towards government and taxpayer dollars, that it can be plundered for this grift and that grift, and getting to it actually says, okay, now things are going to change. We're going to do things different. But to get back to Musk himself, he is what's called a special government employee. I think he cannot be in that position for any more than 130 days. Doge itself is the renaming of an office set up by Obama. So there are some young employees who have been designated from different departments to work, four employees from each department to work with Doge. They're doing things at such pace that there are bound to be some legal errors, and those will be challenged, etc. But this is not the coup or the sort of the parallel government that people are suggesting, is it?
No, I mean, I've heard in news reports that they're trying to dismantle the federal government. But at the same time, they'll say something like USAID spends a tiny amount of money, less than 1% of the federal budget. But somehow going after that is trying to bring down the entire federal government. Now, I think a lot of things are being done by Doge in a very irregular sort of way. Musk, you know, you have to remember, a billionaire, if you have $400 billion, you don't have a lot of constraints on you. He's the boss of his companies. He tells people what to do. And if they bring up some sort of regulation, he'll say, that's stupid, let's do this. Well, that's not exactly the way the federal government operates, nor is it Should it be? So I think one thing that's interesting, in the last 48 hours, we've seen President Trump take two opportunities to remind people that he, President Trump, is in charge of Elon Musk.
Right. Elon can't do and won't do anything without our approval, and we'll give him the approval where appropriate. Where not appropriate, we won't.
And that if Elon Musk goes outside his boundaries, or if he comes up with bad ideas, or if he has conflicts of interest, he will be stopped.
Right.
So I think it was interesting that Trump has offered these public cautions. At the same time, he's saying that Elon's doing a great job.
He's a very talented guy from the standpoint of management and costs. He does have a good natural instinct. He's got a team of very talented people. We're trying to shrink government.
Yes, and it's also notable, for example, that Musk is not one of the defendants in the trade union lawsuits about what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, the actual actions are being taken by the government departments, the people who are fully within the government. He is a sort of glorified consultant. Of course, he's much higher profile. Let's turn our attention to what immediately knocked Doge and Musk off the headlines. Tuesday night, press conference with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. President Trump very deliberately said that the United States would own Gaza.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it.
It was a shock, I think, perhaps a pleasant shock to Bibi Netanyahu. He didn't quite know how to go there, and I think there were Israeli journalists who didn't. I recall when, this is as though each extraordinary event and each dramatic new move by Trump is displaced in the headlines by the next one. So what can we think about Gaza?
Well, it was absolutely stunning. They're at the White House, and before they meet, this is on Tuesday afternoon, they meet in the Oval Office with a lot of the press, and everybody's just yelling questions. But Trump floats this idea in that time, and then they go and have their meeting, and then they come out and they do this formal news conference where Trump, speaks at greater length about this. And, frankly, you think, this is the craziest idea I've ever heard in my life. I mean, the one thing that I think any American would not want is a large American military presence in Gaza, and a large number of Americans who are targets to be in Gaza. I mean, the whole idea, and then Trump was saying, and some reporters said, there's 1.7, 1.8 million Gazans, they want to go back. And he said, no, they don't want to go back. It's just terrible.
Why would they want to return? The place has been hell. It's been one of the meanest, toughest places on earth. And right now, I've seen every picture from every angle, better than if I were there. And nobody can live there. You can't live there.
I mean, it's just a hellhole. It's a rubble, and we're going to build someplace really nice, with lovely housing and all this stuff, and they'll be happy there. And it won't be it won't have such bad luck there. So it was kind of a crazy moment.
If we can build them through massive amounts of money supplied by other people, very rich nations, and they're willing to supply it. If we can build something for them in one of the countries, and it could be Jordan, and it could be Egypt, it could be other countries, and you could build 4 or 5 or 6 areas. It doesn't have to be one area, but you take certain areas and you build really good quality housing, like a beautiful town, like someplace where they can live and not die. Because Gaza is a guarantee that they're going to end up dying. The same thing's going to happen again.
It was a crazy moment. It's already been rejected by Arab leaders, the important Arab leaders of the sort of sensible.
But I will say that Trump kept saying, Egypt and Jordan will take some people, some Palestinian. And Egypt and Jordan had said, no, no, no.
Right.
And Trump had said, I think they're going to get to yes.
Well, and I think that perhaps part of getting to yes will be next week when King Abdullah and General Sisi are both going to be in Washington.
Right.
Presumably, President Trump has thought through at least part of this idea for the change in Gaza, and that's going to be the next step. Having them come to the White House, have those official meetings, and put pressure on them. there's always been a question hanging over the very considerable amount of aid that the United States gives to Egypt. Presumably he can use that for leverage.
Right. But you always have to think here, what does Trump want? I mean, is he really talking about taking, he said the United States would take it over, it would literally own it, it would clean up Gaza. There are apparently 30,000 unexploded munitions in Gaza, in addition to just all the rubble there. And so it's a completely unlivable moonscape. And we're going to take it over, clean it up, and do some wonderful development because it's great oceanfront property.
Yes.
Does he mean that?
Yes.
Or is there something else that he wants? I mean, it's a little bit on a much larger scale what we're talking about with the tariffs. You know, that he threatens the tariff, and the target of the threat realizes that he actually will impose it if it comes to that. And they try to think, well, what does he want? What if I say, if I'm Mexico, I'll send 10,000 troops to the border to make sure that illegal border crossers are stopped before they even attempt? And Trump goes, oh, that sounds good.
Yes.
No tariffs for you. So you're always trying to think, what is it that Trump actually wants when he makes a proposal?
Well, he's doing that thing where you aim above the target and the arrow falls
he went way above the target
into the middle of the target. We'll see what the target is there. Just as with Panama, the threat of a takeover, you send the Secretary of State down there and he comes back with some commitment to end the Chinese contract on the canal. Finally, let's just turn to the nominees. We've talked about nominees before, but it was a real boost for a couple of nominees and also for Trump's ability to put his team together when both Tulsi Gabbard and candidate RFK Jr. got through committee. It's going pretty well for Trump in the putting together of his team.
It is, actually. As we speak, the new Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has just been sworn in. And this morning, Jason Miller, who's one of the senior advisors at the White House, tweeted that on this date in 2017, the Senate had fully confirmed 4 Trump nominees, and now it's 11. So clearly, much better pace. So the big problems were always going to be Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK Jr. So Hegseth gets in, and what we saw now are 2 committee votes on Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr., and they got through both of them on party line votes. That's why you need to win control of the Senate. I mean, Trump wouldn't have any cabinet at all if Democrats controlled the Senate. So they're going to go to the full Senate. Now, I remember in the Hegseth vote, it was a little closer than I thought. I didn't think it was going to be 50-50, and the vice president have to break the tie. So maybe this will be close to, but we don't really know of 3 Republicans who are going to oppose either one of those nominations. Right.
No, it's looking good for both of those, I'd say, which is something of a surprise. We had actually opposed Tulsi Gabbard, but it looks like she'll get through. Byron, thanks very much for joining me.
Good to be here.
Thank you all for joining us on Political Perspectives. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.